When I signed the lease for my basement apartment, the landlord mentioned the unit above me had been vacant for months. He said the previous tenant left suddenly, but he didn't elaborate. The rent was cheap, the location was perfect, and I needed a place fast after my divorce. I moved in on a Saturday. Everything seemed fine at first. The apartment was quiet, exactly what I needed to rebuild my life. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so I work from home most days. That first week, I barely left except to grab groceries. Then, on Thursday night around 11, I heard footsteps upstairs. Heavy footsteps. Someone was walking back and forth across the ceiling directly above my bedroom. I figured the landlord had finally rented the place out and forgot to tell me. I tried to ignore it, but the pacing continued for hours. Back and forth, always the same path. Around 3 in the morning, it finally stopped. The next day, I ran into my landlord in the parking lot. I mentioned the new tenant upstairs and asked if they always stayed up so late. He looked at me confused and said the apartment was still empty. He hadn't shown it to anyone in weeks. When I insisted I heard someone walking around, he got defensive and said old buildings make noise, that it was probably pipes or the structure settling. But I knew what I heard. Those were footsteps. That night, I stayed up waiting. Sure enough, at 11 on the dot, the pacing started again. Same pattern, same heavy thuds. I grabbed my phone and recorded the sound. The next morning, I sent it to my sister, who's a cop. She called me immediately and said that definitely sounded like footsteps, not pipes. She told me to call the landlord and demand he check the apartment. When I called, he seemed irritated. He said he'd come by that evening with his master key to prove no one was there. I waited all day, anxious and jumpy. Around 6, he showed up with his keys jangling. We went upstairs together, and he unlocked the door to the vacant unit. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, just dust and afternoon sunlight streaming through dirty windows. We walked through every room. Nothing. The landlord gave me this look like I was wasting his time and suggested maybe I was hearing my own footsteps echoing. I'm in a basement apartment. That made no sense. He left, clearly annoyed, and I went back downstairs feeling foolish. Maybe I was just stressed from the divorce. Maybe I wasn't sleeping well and imagining things. I tried to convince myself of that. But the footsteps came back that night. 11 on the dot. And this time, they were different. Instead of pacing, whoever was up there was running. Sprinting from one end of the apartment to the other, then stopping abruptly. Then running back. Over and over. The ceiling shook with each impact. I called the police. 2 officers showed up around midnight. They went upstairs with the landlord, who I could tell was furious with me. They searched the entire apartment with flashlights. They checked closets, the bathroom, even looked out on the balcony. Nothing. The officers came back down and basically told me the same thing the landlord had said. Old building, settling sounds, maybe get some rest. After they left, I sat in my living room with every light on. The running had stopped the moment the police arrived, which felt too convenient. Around 3 in the morning, exhausted, I finally fell asleep on my couch. I woke up to silence. It was 9 in the morning. I had drooled on my throw pillow and my neck was stiff. For a moment, I felt relieved. Maybe it really had been my imagination. Then I went to my bedroom to grab my phone charger. There, on my bedroom ceiling, directly above my bed, were dozens of footprints. Dusty footprints, like someone had been walking on a dirty floor and then somehow walked across my ceiling. They followed the exact path I'd been hearing every night. Back and forth, ending right above where I sleep. I took pictures. So many pictures. Then I packed a bag and left. I stayed with my sister for 3 days before I got the courage to go back, and only because I needed to get my work equipment. When I opened my bedroom door, the footprints were gone. The ceiling was clean, like they'd never been there. But I had the photos. I showed them to my sister, to friends, to anyone who would look. Everyone said the same thing. They could see the footprints clearly, but there was no logical explanation for how they got there. My sister even enhanced the images and confirmed they were real, not edited. I broke my lease and moved out 2 weeks later. The landlord kept my deposit, claiming I breached the contract. I didn't care. I couldn't stay there another night. Before I left, I did some research on the building. Turns out, 5 years ago, a woman in the upstairs apartment had died. She was found 3 weeks after she passed, decomposed beyond recognition. According to the news articles I found, she had been pacing her apartment in the weeks before she died, keeping neighbors awake with her endless walking. She had severe anxiety and insomnia. The coroner ruled it natural causes, but neighbors reported seeing her walking around her apartment even after she should have been dead. One person said they heard running footsteps the night before she was found, like she was trying to escape something. I don't live in that part of town anymore. I moved across the city, to a top-floor apartment where no one can walk above me. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear footsteps. But now I know they're in my head, echoes of those nights in that basement apartment. At least, I hope they're in my head. Last week, my sister told me the landlord finally rented out the basement unit again. New tenant, young guy, moved in 2 months ago. She said he called the police last Thursday night, claiming someone was running around in the apartment above his. The same apartment that's been vacant since I left. The landlord told him the same thing he told me. Old buildings make noise. My husband and I bought 40 acres of wooded property in rural Oregon last year. We'd always dreamed of building a small cabin and living off the land, away from the city noise and stress. The property was perfect, thick forest, a small creek running through it, and complete privacy. Our nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. We couldn't move there full-time right away, so we drive up every other weekend to work on the land and plan where to build. My husband, Derek, is big into hunting, so one of the first things he did was set up trail cameras around the property to see what kind of wildlife we had. He positioned 4 cameras at different locations, checking them each time we visited. The first few weeks, the cameras captured exactly what you'd expect. Deer, raccoons, a black bear passing through, even a bobcat. Derek was thrilled. He'd spend hours reviewing the footage, talking about where he'd set up tree stands for bow season. I thought it was all fascinating, the way the cameras captured these animals going about their lives, completely unaware they were being watched. Then we found the first strange photo. It was from the camera positioned deepest in the woods, about half a mile from where we parked. The timestamp said 3:42 in the morning. The image showed our trail, illuminated by the camera's flash. And standing directly in the center of the frame was a person. They were facing the camera, completely still. They wore dark clothing, and their face was pale in the harsh light. But what made my stomach drop was their expression, or lack of one. They were just staring at the camera with their mouth slightly open, not smiling, not frowning, just blank. Derek thought maybe it was a hiker who got lost, though it seemed weird they'd be out there at that hour. We scrolled through the rest of that camera's photos. The person appeared in 7 more shots, each taken minutes apart. In each one, they were in the exact same position, same blank stare, like they hadn't moved at all between photos. The camera was set to capture images every 5 minutes when it detected motion. We decided to check the other cameras. 2 of them showed nothing unusual, just more wildlife. But the 4th camera, the one closest to the road, had captured something that made my hands shake. The same person, same timestamp, 3:42 in the morning. But this camera was over a quarter mile from where the first photos were taken. There was no way someone could cover that distance in the few seconds between the photos. The terrain was too rough, too dense with underbrush. Derek tried to rationalize it. Maybe there were 2 people. Maybe it was a coincidence they were wearing similar clothing. But we both knew that didn't make sense. The face was identical. Same pale complexion, same blank expression, same slightly open mouth. We reported it to the sheriff's department. A deputy drove out and looked at the photos. He said he'd increase patrols in the area and suggested we post no trespassing signs, which we already had. He seemed more concerned about illegal hunters than anything else. He didn't seem bothered by how the same person appeared in 2 places at once. The next weekend, we drove up with our friend Mike, who's a big guy and former military. We didn't want to go alone after seeing those photos. We checked all 4 cameras. The strange person appeared in every single one, multiple times throughout the week. Always at 3:42 in the morning. Always in different locations, but always in the same pose with that terrible blank stare. In one photo, they were standing right next to Derek's truck, which we'd left parked on the property. In another, they were at the edge of the creek. In another, they were on the trail leading to where we'd planned to build our cabin. Each location was separated by significant distance and rough terrain. Mike didn't say much while we reviewed the photos, but I could tell he was unsettled. He suggested we set up cameras with video capability instead of just still images. We agreed and ordered a couple online that night. While we waited for the new cameras to arrive, we decided not to go back to the property. Something about those photos made us both deeply uncomfortable. The person never approached the cameras, never tried to disable them, just stood there staring. It felt intentional, like they wanted us to see them. The new cameras arrived a week later. These were high-end models with night vision video and cell phone connectivity, so we could watch live footage from anywhere. We drove up on a Friday afternoon, installed the cameras, and drove straight home. We didn't stay overnight. That night, around midnight, Derek got a motion alert on his phone. He pulled up the live feed and I watched over his shoulder. The camera showed our trail, illuminated in grainy green night vision. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then someone walked into frame. It was them. Same person, same expressionless face. But now we could see them moving. They walked very slowly, almost mechanically, directly toward the camera. They stopped about 6 feet away and just stood there, staring into the lens. Their mouth was open slightly, and I could see their eyes were completely devoid of emotion or thought. They looked empty. Derek and I sat frozen, watching this person stand motionless on our property, staring at the camera. Minutes passed. They didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. Then, suddenly, they turned and walked back the way they came, disappearing into the darkness. We checked the other camera. Sure enough, less than a minute later, the person appeared on that feed too, a quarter mile away. They did the same thing. Walked to the camera, stood and stared, then walked away. This continued for weeks. Every night around midnight, the person would appear on all our cameras, always following the same pattern. We called the sheriff again. They sent deputies to search the property multiple times. They never found anyone. No footprints besides ours and the deputies', no campsites, no signs anyone was living out there. A deputy suggested we take the cameras down for a while, see if the person would stop coming around if they weren't being recorded anymore. We tried that for 2 weeks. When we reinstalled the cameras, the person appeared that very first night, right on schedule. We stopped going to the property after that. We still own it, but we haven't been back in 4 months. The cameras are still there, still sending alerts every night at midnight. Sometimes I check the feed, though Derek won't anymore. The person is always there, walking from camera to camera, staring with that blank expression. Last month, Derek finally told me he wants to sell the property. I agreed immediately. We contacted a realtor and listed it. She asked if we had any trail camera footage of the wildlife that she could use in the listing. Derek said no, that the cameras had been stolen. We had 2 people view the property. Both made offers, but both withdrew within 24 hours. The realtor said they wouldn't explain why, just that they'd changed their minds. I wonder if they checked the property at night. I wonder if they saw what we saw. The cameras are still sending alerts. Every night at midnight. I stopped checking the feed weeks ago, but Derek obsessively watches sometimes, like he's hoping to finally understand what's happening. Last night, he came into our bedroom at 2 in the morning and woke me up. He looked terrified. I asked what was wrong. He handed me his phone. On the screen was the live feed from one of the cameras. The person was there, standing in their usual spot, staring at the camera. But this time, they were holding something. It was a trail camera. Our trail camera from one of the locations. They held it up to show us, turning it slowly so we could see it from every angle. Then they looked back at our camera and did something they'd never done before. They smiled. We're selling the property as is, cameras and all. We don't care if we lose money. We just want to be done with it. But I keep thinking about something. Those cameras have cell connectivity. They send footage to Derek's phone. Which means somehow, someway, that person knows Derek's phone number. They know we're watching them. And now they're watching us back. I drive for a rideshare company part-time to make extra money. I usually work weekend nights, typically taking passengers to bars, restaurants, or home from the airport. The job is usually boring, sometimes annoying, but never particularly scary. That changed 3 weeks ago. It was a Saturday night around 10. I'd been driving for a few hours and was thinking about calling it a night when I got a ping for a pickup at a residential address in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. The passenger's name was listed as David R. The destination was across town, about a 30-minute drive. Decent fare, so I accepted it. I pulled up to the address, a small ranch house with a dim porch light. The app said the passenger would be out in 2 minutes. I waited, scrolling through my phone. 3 minutes passed, then 5. I was about to cancel when the rear door opened and someone got in. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The passenger was a man, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see much of his face in the shadows. I greeted him using the name from the app and confirmed the destination. He said yes, that was correct, though his voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I started driving. The first 15 minutes were normal. He didn't talk, which was fine with me. Most passengers don't want conversation. I had the radio on low, playing some indie station. The streets were mostly empty since we were driving through residential areas. Then I noticed something in the mirror. He was staring at me, not looking around casually or checking his phone like most passengers. Just staring at the back of my head with this intense, unwavering gaze. I tried to ignore it, told myself I was being paranoid. But the staring continued. Every time I glanced in the mirror, His eyes were fixed on me. I couldn't see his full expression because of the cap and the darkness, but something about the way he sat, completely motionless, made my skin crawl. I tried to make conversation, asked if he was heading home or going out. He didn't respond, just kept staring. The silence in the car became oppressive, broken only by the low radio and the sound of tires on pavement. We were about 10 minutes from the destination when he finally spoke. He said my name. My actual first name, not something he'd have seen in the app since drivers' last names aren't displayed to passengers. I felt my stomach drop. I asked how he knew my name. He didn't answer, just repeated it again, slower this time, like he was savoring it. Then he said my last name too. My full name. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and told him I was going to end the ride. He needed to get out. He laughed, a low sound that made the hair on my neck stand up, and said we were almost there, just keep driving. I was scared now, genuinely scared, but we were on a mostly empty road with no businesses or gas stations nearby. I didn't want to stop in an isolated area with this man in my car. I decided to keep driving until we reached a more populated area, then I'd pull over and call the police. As we got closer to the destination, I realized the address was taking us to an industrial area, lots of warehouses and empty parking lots. Nothing that would be open at this hour. My hands were shaking on the wheel. Then he spoke again. He said he'd been watching my route all night. He knew where I lived because I'd started my shift from my home address. He described my apartment building, even mentioned my car was silver and that I had a small dent in the rear bumper. Everything he said was accurate. I was panicking now. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but before I could, he leaned forward and reached between the seats. I thought he was going to grab me, but instead he just placed something on the passenger seat. A piece of paper. He told me to read it when I got home. Then he told me to pull over, that he was getting out early. We were still 5 minutes from the destination, in the middle of the industrial area. I pulled over immediately, wanting him out of my car as fast as possible. He opened the door, stepped out, and leaned back in before closing it. He thanked me for the ride, using my full name again, and said he'd see me again soon. Then he shut the door and walked into the darkness between two warehouses. I sat there for a moment, shaking, then grabbed the paper he'd left. It was a printed photo. A photo of me, taken from a distance, walking to my car in my apartment parking lot. The timestamp on the photo was from that morning. I immediately called the police and told them everything. They took a report and said they'd look into it, but when I gave them the passenger's name and account information from the app, the company later told me the account was fake, created with a burner email and a prepaid credit card. The phone number was disconnected. The police suggested I file for a restraining order, but you need to know who you're restraining. I had no last name, no real information, just a blurry description and a photo he'd taken of me. I stopped driving for the rideshare company that night. I also moved out of my apartment 2 weeks later, even though I just signed a new lease. The landlord wasn't sympathetic, but I didn't care. I couldn't stay there knowing someone had been watching me, knew where I lived, had probably been following me for who knows how long. The worst part was what the company told me when I reported the incident. They said I wasn't the first driver to report something strange with pickups from that address. Over the past 6 months, 3 other drivers had reported similar experiences. Passengers who knew too much about them, who stared at them the entire ride, who made them feel unsafe. The company claimed they'd flagged the address, but clearly it hadn't prevented my pickup. I asked what happened to those other drivers, if they were okay. The company representative wouldn't tell me, cited privacy concerns. But I managed to find one of them through a local rideshare driver forum. Her name was Jessica, and she agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. She'd had almost the exact same experience. Same type of passenger, same unnerving stare, same knowledge of her personal information. He'd given her a photo too, one of her walking into her gym. She'd reported it to the police, changed her routines, even bought pepper spray. The police never found the person. But Jessica told me something that made my blood run cold. She said 2 months after her incident, she was at a shopping mall when she saw him. The passenger. He was standing across the food court, just staring at her. She said he smiled and waved, then walked away. She reported it to the police again, but there was nothing they could do. He hadn't threatened her or approached her. Just watched. She said he'd appeared 3 more times since then. Always at a distance, always just watching. The most recent time was last week, she said. He was outside her new apartment building, standing on the sidewalk, looking up at her window. I haven't seen my passenger since that night. It's been 3 weeks. But I have this feeling, this constant sensation of being watched. When I'm at the grocery store, when I'm walking to my car, when I'm alone in my new apartment at night. I keep looking over my shoulder, scanning crowds, checking my mirrors. Yesterday, I received a notification from the rideshare app, even though I deleted my driver account. It was a ride request. The pickup address was my new apartment building, a place I've never shared with anyone online. The passenger name was listed as David R. The destination was listed as the same warehouse district from 3 weeks ago. I blocked the app and reported it to the company. They said the request must have been a glitch since my account was inactive. But I know what I saw. I'm writing this because I need people to know what's happening. If you drive for a rideshare company, be careful. Check your passengers' ratings, trust your instincts, and if something feels wrong, end the ride immediately. Don't worry about your rating or the company's policies. Your safety matters more. And if you get a pickup request from a David R., especially to or from that industrial area, please don't accept it. I don't know what he wants or why he's targeting drivers. But I know he's still out there, creating new accounts, requesting new rides, watching new victims. Last night, my doorbell rang at 2 in the morning. I didn't answer it, just checked my peephole. No one was there. But this morning, when I left for work, there was something taped to my door. It was another photo of me, taken through my apartment window last night. I was sitting on my couch, watching TV, completely unaware I was being photographed. On the back of the photo, written in neat handwriting, was a message. It said, "Thanks for the ride. Looking forward to our next trip together. I'm staying with my parents now. I don't know what else to do." The police say they're investigating, but I can tell they don't have any leads. I've changed my number, deleted all my social media, even changed my appearance. But I know it won't matter. He knew where I lived before. He'll find me again. And next time, I don't think he'll just be watching.